Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jaylene Herron. I am a fellow here at the National Congress of American Indians. On behalf of NCAI, we'd like to thank you for attending this presentation called Native Vote 2016 webinar series, Building Your Get Out the Native Vote Plan. Before we begin the presentation, I'd like to go over some of our webinar features. First, you should see on your screen the PowerPoint for today's presentation. If during the presentation you experience any lag in slide transition, it may be a result of internet connection, so just give it a few extra seconds to update on your screen. We will also be having Q&A sessions at various slides throughout the presentation. I will announce and provide instructions for how to answer these questions at these times. Currently, with the exception of panelists, all audience phone lines are muted until the conclusion of the presentation. But if you would like to ask a question before or during our Q&A sessions, you can type it in the questions box on your webinar control panel. If you would like to ask your question over the phone, please use the raise hand option so we can unmute your phone line. Also, our webinar software archives all questions submitted through the questions box. So if we are unable to answer or address your question, we will follow up with you after the webinar has concluded. And finally, this webinar is being recorded so that we can share this presentation with you and others not able to attend today. Now that we've covered some of the webinar features, I'd like to turn it over to Robert Holden, who will give an introduction.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is Robert Holden, Deputy Director at National Congress of American Indians. I'm Choctaw and Chickasaw, and I really want to express my appreciation for your time and your effort and your energy and your interest in Native Vote for your local communities, for your tribes, and on a national basis. Because we've, as you know, we've learned long ago that when Native people vote, policymakers have an incentive to pay attention to our issues and concerns, but when there's low turnout, they don't necessarily do that. We'll be talking today about cost-effective ways to increase voter turnout and to help lead to these further dramatic policy changes. Just want to put on your screen the NCAI Mid-Year Conference the last week in June in Spokane. We'll be talking about Native vote training tools, things that can make a difference regarding VAN. And but with that, my emails are holden@ncai.org. Please contact me or Jaylene, who's just done a tremendous amount of work and is really value to our program. And thank you, Jaylene, for your technical assistance. But I want to introduce Travis Lane. He's Assistant Director with Intertribal Council of Arizona. He's come up through the ranks. He's community-based, done a lot towards Native vote development in the last few years, and we're really fortunate to have him on board and agreeing to provide and share the information, the expertise that he has accumulated. So, Travis, it's all yours, my friend.
Travis, this is Jaylene. We can't hear you.
Jaylene, did you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, I apologize for that. This is Travis Lane, and I serve as Assistant Director for Intertribal Council of Arizona. I've been with the organization for about 13 years, and for about 10 years, I've coordinated the Native Vote or the voting efforts here at ITCA. And so thank you to NCAI for inviting me to provide information, that some best practices that tribes and tribal organizations can learn about with regards to planning your voting activities. On the first slide, you'll see our address, phone number, and then also our itcaonline.com webpage, and we invite you to visit our webpage to learn more about our organization. So I'll talk a little bit about ITCA's voter education outreach activities, but first I just wanted to give you a quick background on the tribes in Arizona. This is a map of Arizona with the tribal lands and where they're located. There are 22 federally recognized tribes in Arizona. Of course, as you know, each tribe is governed differently, and we can kind of group our tribes into sort of some linguistic or cultural groups. So we have the Athabascan tribes, which is the Navajo, White Mountain Apache, San Carlos Apache, Tonto Apache, Yavapai Apache. The Pima, which is the O'odham people of the South, so Salt River, Gila River, Ak-Chin, and Banoptum. And we have the Pueblos from the Hopi tribe and the Pueblo of Zuni, and then the Shoshonean tribes, which is the Kaibab Paiute tribe and San Juan Southern Paiute tribe. And then finally the Yuman tribe, which is what we call the Colorado River tribes, so the Havasupai, Wallapai, Fort McDowell, or Fort Mojave, Colorado River, Quechan, and Cocopah. And then we do have one tribe that's technically not from Arizona, but has been inhabiting the state for many years, and that's the Pasquayaqui tribe. Tribal land in Arizona is about 3.14 million acres, and we make up about 28% of Arizona's land base. Tribal enrollment averages around 460,000, but the population is about 365,000. And our population makes up 5.5% of the Arizona general population. So as a people, we have the base in order to affect political outcomes here in Arizona, and so we're very excited to see if we can grab a strong American Indian voter base, what the policies can look like in Arizona if we support voting. Our organization was established in 1952. The governor at that time convened tribal leaders, and he wanted to figure out how to address some of those issues that are happening on tribal lands. And so that was the first mention of the need for an intertribal council. Also at the time, there was federal policies around termination. There was relocation, there was derecognition, and the tribal leaders were also concerned about that. So they felt that there was a need that with a united voice that we can come together and address some of these bad policies that were going on. We were one of the first regional intertribal associations that created. I think the affiliate tribes of Northwest Indians may have been organized at that time, but also the All Indian Pueblo Council, I think, has been in existence for many years prior to us. Our mission is to take action on matters that affect our member tribes collectively and individually, to promote tribal sovereignty and to strengthen tribal governance. 21 members, tribes are on our council. As a nonprofit, we were created in 1975, and we were authorized by our member tribes to administer various programs and services. And so we serve as a sort of an intermediary between federal and state funding and also funding that goes to the tribes. This is just sort of a quick overview of some of the work that we do here as far as grants administration, policy development, and then technical assistance and training. Did want to acknowledge NCAI Native Vote. We have been a long-time partner with NCAI and their work to promote voting in tribal communities. NCAI supported training on election years in Arizona, and NCAI for many years has provided great resources and information in order for ITCA to do the work that we do around voting. And that's kind of how I learned how to do all this, was really through Native Vote. So thank you, NCAI. Sorry. So just want to give you a quick history of Indian voting in Arizona. While tribes or Indians were recognized for citizenship in 1924, they weren't allowed to vote in Arizona. There was a Arizona Supreme Court case, Porter and Johnson v. Hall, where there were Indians from the Gila River Indian community. They wanted to vote, and the judge said that the Indians were under federal guardianship, which basically meant put us at the same level as a person with a disability or was mentally not able to vote on their own or make decisions on their own. And then in I think it was the 1940s, we had Harrison v. Levine. Harry Yostin and Frank Harrison were Yavapai Indians, and they tried to vote. Frank Harrison was a World War II veteran, and when they came back, the veterans came back from World War II, they weren't allowed to vote. So they filed a lawsuit in Maricopa County. NCAI, along with others, provided amicus briefs with regard to this case, and we were successful in that case. And Judge Morris Udall quoted in his ruling, "In a democracy, suffrage is the most basic civil right, since its exercise is the chief means whereby other rights may be safeguarded. To deny the right to vote, where one is legally entitled to do so, is to do violence to the principles of freedom and equality." And so I really take that to heart as far as the passion that I have for promoting voting amongst our tribal communities. So we started doing voter work pretty early once we established our nonprofit organization. This is just a cover page of a voter guide that we produced back in 1976. In the 1980s, we produced a video, The History of Indian Voting Rights in Arizona. That gentleman on the right is Frank Harrison, I believe. And it is up on YouTube. That's the YouTube reference, but if you just Google or YouTube in the search option, The History of Indian Voting in Arizona, you'll find the video. It's about 15 minutes long. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about the barriers to voting. There's a lot of personal reasons why someone would vote, but there's also systematic reasons why there's barriers to voting. And so a lot of it has to do with language and literacy barriers, and that is kind of related to the history of voting in Arizona. Was that Arizona required a literacy test in order to be eligible to vote, and so many of our American Indians weren't allowed to do that, which led to the passage of the Voting Rights Act. Back in 2002, there was a proposition that was passed which required verification of citizenship in order to register to vote, and then verification of residency in order to cast the ballot. So photo ID requirements and address requirements continue to this day be a major problem for why American Indians aren't able to vote. Of course, with our tribal lands being dispersed across the state, it is difficult oftentimes to get people actually to the polls. Sometimes there could be early voting limitations. We have a permanent early voting list option here in Arizona, and while it had good intentions, it is starting to be a barrier for many of our people because they sign up for it, not unknowingly signed up, and then try to vote, and they say that they can't cast a regular ballot. There's redistricting issues. There's a current initiative. I think it's United States wide to provide physical addresses as a mailing address, and we're seeing that conversion happening in many of our tribal communities. And with that physical address change, the voter precinct that one American Indian had voted for many years, they're no longer voting in that precinct, and they are not aware of where the correct voting precinct is. This is Arizona, so voter intimidation and suppression continues to occur here in Arizona. We have our famous Joe Arpaio, who continues to park his vehicles in front of precincts where American Indians reside. The Minutemen, things like that, where there's the this is a group that likes to have a hold guns and park out in front of polling locations. And then, of course, there's issues around the lack of voter outreach and education in general. Sometimes people don't understand the two-party system. And then, of course, if you're on the tribal land, the precincts, the state and federal precincts don't match up with tribal precincts or districts. So there's a lot to, and then I guess, again, there's also the personal reason why one doesn't want to vote. So there's always these issues with voting that we have to look at. And so I think ITCA over the years has done a pretty good job at kind of addressing some of these barriers and promoting voting throughout Arizona. So these are just a list of the overall voter engagement activities you want to start thinking about when you're developing your GOTV plan. There's activities around voter registration, voter education, candidate education, general just get out the vote efforts, and then finally election protection. And I'll go over a few of those activities and some of the activities that ITC has implemented over the years. So with voter registration, obviously you want to develop a plan to look at opportunities to promote the voter registration. In Arizona, we don't have same-day registration. We have deadlines of when you deadlines for registering for primary and general elections. And so you do need to think about those deadlines and the calendar in order to make sure that when somebody registers, they're eligible to vote in the primary or eligible to vote in the general election. And these are things in which you can plan in conjunction with community events, or you can also coordinate it as an independent event or go door to door. One thing in Arizona is that there's new laws around ensuring that when you are doing a voter registration drive, that body or that that group has to turn back those registration packets in a timely manner, and that's just a general good rule. So you not only have to make a plan to implement these voter registration drives, but also part of that plan is to make sure that you return those forms back to the county. WIC, we administer a women's, infants, and children's program for 12 tribal communities in Arizona. And as part of federal regulation, the WIC workers are required to ask their clients if they are registered, and if not, then they are to provide assistance in registering those clients. So if you do have a WIC program in your tribal community, you'd want to engage them and make sure that they have protocols in place in order to make sure that their clients are getting registered. There's also options in Arizona and I'm sure elsewhere to do early voting as well. So you want to think about if wanting to engage particular groups where early voting may be a good idea. We found success with doing early voting with elders and also sometimes veterans, since they do have a place to convene on a daily basis. Typically what you want to do is you want to check your voter registration laws around collecting of that personal identifying information so you can create a GOTV database. I understand that there's some laws where you can't make a photocopy of the form, but maybe you can have them fill out a different form that you can then use to contact them later when you're starting to do your GOTV work. But that's where the mail and phone banking reminders can then be implemented. And talking about voter education, it's really around making sure that American Indians have a good understanding of the voting process, that they understand the requirements when it comes to registering to vote, the requirements to casting a ballot, knowing the deadlines. So our ITCA Voter Outreach and Education Working Group is comprised of tribal voter coordinators, and ITCA requests of all of our member tribes to appoint a tribal voter coordinator, and then through our working group we coordinate helping these coordinators make their plans to implement voter outreach in their communities. And we do a lot of this, which is information sharing best practices, understanding possible collaborations within the community where they could promote registering or GOTV activities. We also coordinate a voting 101 training that really kicks off all of our voting activities during any election year. And we were very fortunate to work with NCAI 2 years ago to get the Voter Access Network training and access, in which we were able to do a lot of really good election protection work. And hopefully, if we are able to get that access again this year, we really want to push early voting and GOTV work. In Arizona, we have the Arizona Clean Elections Commission. We're collaborating with them to create voter education material for our tribal communities, and have some really good meetings around that, and thinking about a good dissemination plan, how we can access, where we can send mailings, or if there's social media that we can use to make sure that our information is correct and that it's getting to the tribal communities. And that could look like flyers or handouts that we pass out. And then also, we do intend to promote early voting through public service announcements. Something that ITC has done for many years, and we kind of haven't been doing it as much in the past couple of years, but candidate education is still really important. We always try to promote the tribes to plan a candidates forum. It is kind of difficult sometimes here in Arizona to get the active participation of certain parties, but I think it does make a strong statement when you are able to plan a forum and knowing who's really supportive of tribes and who really isn't. And so and there's a lot of resources online where you can learn how to plan a candidates forum. We have a small published or a document that we have shared with tribes in the past about planning candidates forums. But also, we've also do the voter guides as well. That was the first document that I showed, was the voter guide we had back in '76, and this is one that we did back in 1996. With regards to GOTV efforts, that's really engaging your community one-on-one with mailings, phone calls, door-to-door, coordinating transportation to and from polling locations. Sometimes if you can work with your tribal governments, you can include paycheck reminders in their pay stubs. And then also providing just general voter assistance at polling locations. And that's sort of related to election protection. Back in 2006, ITCA collaborated with a national organization called Election Protection. I think it's out of the Lawyers Committee, to provide that information about a hotline that American Indians could call, and if they were having any problems with any barriers to casting their ballot at a polling location. That collaboration, and I know they've developed their program since then, but we kind of felt like it wasn't working for our American Indian living in rural communities. And the practice really was, we would call that number and they would say, oh, well, just call your county elections office. That's not really helpful for an American Indian when they're trying to cast their ballot. So instead, we worked with Native Vote, and we also worked with ASU's College of Law American Indian Legal Program to provide our own hotline so that American Indians knows that they could call our number and know that they can get the service that they want. So we did that. We also had volunteers. These were the law students at ASU who went to different polling locations on tribal lands to offer voter assistance. A lot of the phone calls that we received was really making sure if that person was registered, if they're at the correct polling location. Again, in Arizona, you have to vote at your correct polling location. Even if you are registered correctly and you are and you have the ability to vote and all that stuff, if you're at the wrong polling location, you'll get a provisional ballot, but it won't get counted. So we really stress that, and we're stressing that this year. We're going to be we have a GIS fellow here at our office, and so we're going to be mapping the tribal lands in Arizona, and then with the voting precincts, and we'll be sharing that with our member tribes so they can educate their community. We also, report any incidences that have occurred, and then with all the intimidation that can occur with being in Arizona, we also have the tribes work with their counties in order to develop voter intimidation protocols should there be a group on tribal lands trying to intimidate American Indians from voting. This is just a picture of some of the what could happen at during on a voting day. This is Sheriff Arpaio parked within the 75-foot line at a polling location in the city of Guadalupe. Guadalupe is a primarily community of the Pasquayaqui tribe, and so with having lawyers on standby, having law students at the polling locations, knowing who to call when we see incidents like this, we were able to have this police officer removed from the polling location. So just wanted to talk about a little of lessons learned. I think when you do voter registration, times you'll be asked, which party do I pick? And as a nonpartisan entity, we really can't tell them what to pick. We really can't tell, and it's also difficult to then talk about what's the difference between a Republican or a Democrat without showing any bias. And so those sometimes those are challenges. I did a voter registration event many years ago, and I had just said, George Bush is a Republican, Bill Clinton is a Democrat, and so that's kind of maybe how I was able to help that particular individual. It's just the volunteer, if you're able to create relationships to get dedicated volunteers, they will go a long way with all of your GOTV work. And it's just wonderful to see that type of dedication and passion that that is shared with my dedication and passion. And so we often get a lot of elder volunteers to do some of that work, and then some of the tribes have been able to utilize their youth council to do some of this work too. And it's so important that as far as your GOTV plans, if you are working for a tribe, that you get the tribal government support. A letter from the elected leader, a resolution from the tribal council, a dedicated staff that can work on doing this stuff. All that type of support can really go a long way when you're trying to do all this work and you are confronted with different barriers. And then I think the other thing that's really important is that when you're doing your materials, making sure that you're making a distinction between tribal voting versus local, state, and federal voting. Sometimes you'll get asked for support for a tribal election when the work that you really are doing is meant for the local, state, and federal voting. And then the last lesson learned is to make sure that if you have volunteers, if you yourself, your family, that you have a plan to vote on either as an early voting or option or voting at the poll. It happens more often than you think that you have all these dedicated people with wanting to help other people vote, but they don't make their own plan to vote, and sometimes the 7 o'clock hits and they're not able to cast their ballot. So have a good general plan for engaging all these voter activities, but then make sure you have a personnel plan so that everyone who is involved in it also has the opportunity to vote. So that's just some information I wanted to share with you. I thank you for inviting me. So one thing I wanted to share is that this is the work that ITCA does, but I wanted to also demonstrate what we do and then what our tribes do as far as their voting efforts. And so I've invited Angela Willeford, who works with the Salt River Pima-Maricopa Indian community, to talk about their voting efforts and to kind of see what a tribal GOTV plan looks like. So with that, I will conclude my remarks. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Travis. And this is Jaylene. I'm just going to change it over to Angela, so you might have a little lag in your screen.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me, Travis or Jaylene?
Yes.
We're good to go.
All right. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Angela Willeford. I'm with the Salt River Pima-Maricopa Indian community. I am Atam Pipash Seminole Creek. I have worked with the Legislative Affairs Office for since 2012, and in 2012 was actually my first GOT effort. So I really want to thank Travis he kind of helped guide me, and then he kind of let me go where now I got to kind of pick up new ideas and figure out what best works for our community. So one thing that I realized early on was, how am I going to get everybody interested in voting? I was thinking, I kind of heard people, when I was registering people to vote, they were like, I don't want to vote, it doesn't pertain to me, my vote doesn't count, and I'm sure you guys are going to hear that often as well. So I was really thinking, and one thing that really inspired me was the history of voting. So during the initial thought process, I'm like, you know what, our ancestors couldn't vote, but you can. So as all of you guys have had similarities, knowing your history on who inspired or who helped with voting in your guys' community, I think that's really key to kind of helping engage the youth and the elders, and kind of understanding the dynamics of how the process began and how it started or ended. I know one story that one of the elders told me was, a long time ago, one of the Kennedys came out, and she said she was so embarrassed because only 2 people had showed up at the community building. And kind of hearing that, and hearing that that during the 70s that an individual from our community was really inspired about educating her community on voting process, it inspired me as well. I think you guys understanding your community and understanding the history to engage your community members. So coining our ancestors couldn't vote but you can, or I'm Atam and Pipash and I couldn't vote but you can. So that's something that it could probably go a long way, depending on what tribe you are. It could go a long way. So here's a video that we created. I'm not going to show it because there's a lag in time. So if you Google GOTV, SRPMIC, it's a really effective tool. I like to show it's about the history of voting, and an idea that you could do is you can have high school students or video enthusiasts assist on this, on an effort of creating a video or something. You know, with iPhones and everyone's technology, you can do so much just with a handheld device. So that's a suggestion. If there's a cost-effective tool, that'd be really good to do like a flyer out there saying, hey, if anyone wants to help me, here's like a sample, or just do a draft and then let them run with it. And engaging their youth as well. So here's some of the tools that I use to educate community members. This was a voter guide I did in 2012 and in 2014. We really have the community council support. So we would get a statement from the president, And then putting the important requirements for voting. I know, like the accepted IDs, the tribal ID, that's something that just in this past primary or presidential preference election, no, I take that back, in our last special election, which just happened last week, I had community members calling me saying that the polling workers weren't accepting voter ID or the tribal ID, so I had to do some education to the polling workers, so I definitely will probably be doing that in the presidential or the primary election. So again, here's the voter guide. It has candidate information, the ballot information, and what is needed to vote. And then if you see the Native American voting history timeline, so in 1866, the Civil Rights Act, and then it goes on to the 1965 Voting Rights Act. So this is really good, and I know, so I'm familiar with Adobe Photoshop and Illustrator, so, but that's where you could probably outreach to community members that are interested in the voting process and see if you can get volunteers to help you assist create things. I think as Native people, we are really artistic, and that's something that if people can say, hey, I helped with that, they take a lot of pride in it. So another thing is using community member opportunities. I go to the high school and kind of give their seniors and their juniors just educational information about the voting, the history of voting, and why it's important for them to vote, what's on the ballot, what candidates to look for. And another thing is kind of going to the elementary school. I know they have voting for children. Is it AZ Kids Vote? Or it could be something else in your town or your state. But what it does is it encourages those elementary students or those youth to go home and kind of educate their parents, like, hey, did you vote today? It's really important, you know, you need to vote, and kind of inspires those youth, inspire their parents or their grandparents. So that's something that I really like to do, just because you see the inspiration in their eyes. So community events. I try to be at all community events to voter to register people to vote. And one thing that I've noticed is that I can get people to register to vote, not a problem. It's getting them to the polls on election day. So in 2012, I had a 15% increase. In 2014, Arizona was the lowest in the U.S. as far as voter participation. And I think that has to do with the candidates. This year it's a presidential, another presidential election, so I'm definitely going to be encouraging people to participate again, and it goes back to the nonpartisan, making sure, like Travis stated, I definitely don't encourage a candidate, I just encourage the voter participation and making sure that I say, hey, as Native Americans, we can work as a voting bloc, so if your family wants to do something, that's fine. If they want to vote for a candidate, go for it, but just vote. Another thing is I invite the candidates to come and talk to, like a forum. Well, we have specific events such as our seniors have a breakfast, so I'll invite the candidates out to come and talk to them, and they'll have a dialogue, just a Q&A session, and just so that they can say, hey, it lets the community know that that candidate's interested in their issues. On election day, I typically host an event. This year, I'll be hosting another GOT event. Last year, or 2012, I teamed up with Rock the Vote, and we hosted an event in Salt River. We had cameras, our TVs, and we watched the election live, and we had food. And I know each community is different as far as cost effectiveness, but I think it's a good opportunity to say, hey, let's have a potluck, and I'll bring the TVs out, or whatever you may do, even if it's at home and just hosting an event. I think that's really good to show that community involvement for everybody. Here's some promotional items that we handed out at our GOTEV event. If you see right here, I have my voter guide. I guess I'm pointing at my screen. You guys can't see, but so I have my mouse. I created a mouse, and these, the first two items on the right, it's a mouse and a shirt, and those were actually designed by a community member. His name is Eric Bacon. I did some outreach to community members, like I had mentioned earlier, for you guys to do, and I said, hey, can you guys design me something? And that pot is a pipash pot, and then inside it says vote, and then it says I'm on Akmel Akam and I vote, and I'm Hoshkitan Pipash and I vote. And then in the shirt you can see there's Red Mountain in the back, and it has different people, as everyone's different in our community. We have construction workers, we have traditionalists, we have business people. So I think just encouraging the community members to kind of be creative in designing something for you guys is really good. And that's what we did. Another thing is we gave out stickers and buttons. So that's just some of the promotional items that I gave out. And let's see. And here's something that I just designed quickly on Photoshop about the important voting dates. I know it's really important for people to understand the deadlines, especially here in Arizona. We have voting deadlines to register to vote, and we have so I give those out to the community members at different events, and just to share important dates. And I think in all this work, it can be done with we create a committee. And in our committee, we kind of educate them on everything so it's not just one individual as myself, it's more of a collective group thinking, like how are we going to help increase voter participation in Salt River. So I thank Travis for giving me the opportunity to kind of educate the group on the importance of voting and how you guys can do it. If you have any questions at all, definitely let me know. So thank you for your time, and I hope you guys have a great afternoon.
Thank you so much for sharing that with us, Angela. And right now we will open it up for questions. So if anybody has questions, they can raise their hand or send it in over our chat. All right, so Roxanne Thomas asked, have there been any other major past concerns in tribal communities relating to election protection in Arizona? So Angela or Travis, do you want to answer that question?
So Travis, if I can just take it, in our presidential preference election, we had a big issue with polling places being closed. I think in Salt River, we were one that happened to be open, but the lines were crazy. I mean, I took a picture of it while I was there handing out water, and I don't think it was anticipated that many polling places would be closed until the day of. So that was a really big issue for Salt River, and I think we're working on it. So that's one of our issues, and then just educating the poll workers on voter ID, making sure that they accept that. Those are our two issues right now.
Yeah, and I would echo Angela's experience with her community, with the other tribal communities in Arizona. But you know, I gave an example about the police presence at Guadalupe. It actually is more common to have that occur in some of the rural communities where they're in close proximity with tribal communities. And part of our election protection effort is that we have roaming lawyers available throughout the state. So if there is anything like that happening, then we can intervene. But it is, and then kind of want to say that we anticipate, you know, even more incidences like that with this presidential election.
Thank you for that. Roxanne had another question. Are there any specific tribal IDs need to have them? Is there any specifics that tribal IDs need to have on them to be valid? And is that for the entire state of Arizona?
Yes, so for Tribalite, the ID requirement in Arizona is that you have to have a picture ID on it, a picture on your ID, and have your current home address that would match the the address that you put on your voter registration. So the barrier that happens with tribal IDs is that oftentimes, say, well, one, the Navajo Nation does, well, I think they do have now, but for the most part, I think our Navajo Nation only has the certificate of Indian blood, so there is no photo ID or address on that document. But I think Navajo is moving towards a photo ID. I heard a rumor, I'm not sure. But for the other tribal communities, what often happens is that a tribal ID may have a photo ID on it, but it may have their tribal home address and not their current address that where they may be living at that time. So maybe they're Colorado River Indian tribes and they have their tribal address, but they're living in Maricopa. So if that addresses don't match the registration address, which is then they would be given a provisional ballot. And with the provisional ballot, you still would need to make sure that you're voting in your correct polling location, or else your vote won't be counted.
All right, thank you for answering that. And then one more question. This is probably directed more towards Angela. What was the increase in voter registration and actual voting numbers in Salt River after the voting outreach intervention?
So in 2012, I want to say I registered 170 people, and then there was, thanks to Vans, that voter, what was it, the Voter Access Network, and Maricopa County, I was able to determine that our numbers had increased by 15%. I just looked at the percentage. I didn't look at the number in total.
Okay, it looks like Darlene has a question. Darlene, I'm going to unmute your line and you can ask it. Okay, it looks like we're having some issues, so I'll go back to the chat.
Jaylene, if you have a gap, I'd like to ask.
There's another question that came in. What does the Native Vote Plan look like in urban environments with high populations of natives, for example, Phoenix?
So our organization, Intertribal Council of Arizona, works directly with our 21 member tribes, and that's the voter work that we do is in tribal communities. So we don't provide direct services to American Indians living in the Phoenix area, with the exception of our WIC program, which is located at Native Health. And so there may be a plan or protocol in place to ensure that their clients are getting registered to vote. The urban community, I would look to the Phoenix Indian Center if they were to do any of that work. I'm not aware what their activities are around voting.
All right, looks like Beverly also has her hand raised. Beverly, I'm going to unmute your line, and you can ask your question. So we have another question in from Rose, and she wants to know, is it okay to register voters at a particular candidate's rally or event? Remaining neutral, of course.
I'm not sure about. I don't know. Does
So-
anyone know?
Well,
Yeah, anyone can register that's qualified. I mean, once you have the registration forms, I mean, candidates do that at their rallies and sign up folks. So that part is, that's okay.
All right, are there any other questions? Or do any of our panelists have anything else to add?
Jaylene, if I could, I just want to ask one, or at least, put an awareness out there. You're talking about voter protection. Travis, Angela, were there any instances that you came across about folks being purged? One of the things to do is to be mindful of is that sometimes names drop off of lists, at voter registration lists, and particularly in some of these areas that we've been talking about. And have you come across that? And you maybe a word of caution to folks about making sure that coordinators and other folks get ahead of the game on this?
Yeah, that's a good question. In years before in Arizona, they had an active list and an inactive list. And I believe the inactive list is something where if the county sent something to their house and it got returned, then they would be inactive. Or if they didn't vote in the last 2 presidential elections, then they were then considered inactive. For many years, there were paper lists that the polling locations would have, and when someone was technically registered, the poll workers would only check the active lists and not check the inactive list. And the inactive list is really kind of like that purging process with the counties. So for many years, we always advocated that if that person didn't vote for many years, that they go and seek if they're on the inactive list. Part of the election protection effort that we did was that we worked with the counties to check whether or not that person was even registered or not, what that situation would be, and then, of course, intervene at the location to ensure that person got a ballot. So it is, with technology these days, a lot of the counties are moving towards these little laptops where they can just check on the person's name, and it's all in the inactive and active lists are all now in one list. And so if there was any problems with why they're inactive, basically there's no inactive list in Arizona anymore because it all continues in one. The only time that maybe they wouldn't be able to vote if they weren't registered, if they moved, so maybe they were in Apache County and they moved to, if they moved within the county, but their address doesn't match their registration address, the computer can update their address at that moment, but they would still vote a provisional ballot, but so long as they're in the right polling location, that their vote would count. Some of these processes vary from county to county in Arizona, so I think there is still that message around active versus inactive lists.
And if you did move or if you have a different address, then that's something to check on.
Yeah.
Any closing thoughts? Angela, Travis?
let's get voter increase in native communities. That's and closing ballots, whatever we can do. Anything that you need help with, or if there's something to give a template out, my email is included on my PowerPoint.
Yes, and I did want to just thank Joaquin Preston. He's our project coordinator here at ITCA. He is the prime lead on our voter efforts here in Arizona, and he's myself also is the point of contact for voter activities on behalf of ITCA. And thank you for the opportunity to provide to share this information, and I definitely encourage your active participating in getting a huge Native American turnout for this election.
Thank you both, and thank you, Joaquin. Thank you, Jaylene. Anything else, Jaylene? I'll turn it back to our host.
Yeah, thank you to everyone for joining our webinar today. We will be sending a follow-up email with the PowerPoint, the videos shared, and as well as a link to the YouTube that will have the entire presentation up. So yeah, we'll send up a follow-up email, and if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me or Robert, and follow Native Vote on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram for updates as well. But thank you all for joining us so much today.
Wait, one more question. You guys have promotional items that you used to give out. You guys, NCAI used to give out promotional items, correct? Do you guys still have those to give?
Yes, we do. I've just reordered some, and we're wrapping up. And you know, we have bumper stickers, pins, ink pens, and some wristbands left. But you know, on those needs, we've got limited supply, and we've got starter kits that we can send out now, beginning now, until an order comes in. So let us know at NCAI, let Jaylene or me know, and we'll get something to you. Good point. Thank you.
All right, thanks everyone.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.